Okay, stretching over there, right on. The speaking portion, I'm trying not to maunder here, but it's my speaking style. So,
Is it over on the table?
is it over there?
A
I'm
little
gonna maunder over
wander.
and grab the introduction. Our first speaker of this meeting is well known to us all, the one and only Cedar Simmons. She's giving her third speech for Bremerton 63, which we are very grateful for. This is level 1 of the team collaboration pathway. The assignment is Introduction to Vocal Variety. This foundational project is designed to help the speaker learn the basics of presenting with engaging vocal variety. The purpose of Cedar's speech is to entertain her audience by joyfully sharing about some of the relationships she made with complete strangers recently as she walked across Spain with her mom on the Camino de Santiago. Her mom, who is with us, by the way. She has asked her evaluator, Joanna Tavera, to pay special attention to volume, pace, and articulation. Everybody, please welcome Cedar Simmons.
I know your face. That's the first thing a man named Pedro, complete stranger, said to me in Spain on this recent trip on the Camino de Santiago. Never met this man before in my life, and he walks up to me and says, "I know your face." Complete stranger. So tonight's story about my trip to Spain with my mom, who is here tonight, is about the people. It's all about the people. And I'm going to dig in pretty good on 2 of our favorite people that we met, Iran and Steven, but it's really all about all the people. So it was the first night. We'd walked all day. We spent 10 days and nights on the Camino. And we got to where we wanted to stop, and we had no idea where we were going to stay. We didn't have any place reserved, and that's kind of another story, not tonight. So my mom walks up to, we found a private room, a place called a pension, and they had private rooms. And we walked up, my mom walks up to the counter, and she goes, "Hola, ¿tienes una habitación con 2 camas, por favor?" Completo. And my Spanish is pretty weak, but I do have this sentence down because we used it quite a bit. And completo, what that means is full. They didn't have any rooms available. And what I said was, "Hi, do you have any rooms available for the night with 2 beds?" And completo means full, no. So what we did is we kept going. We found another place, and this time it was a public albergue. And this means 1 room, lots of beds. So this was it was a hostel made for pilgrims. Oh, they had beds, but only top bunks, no bottom bunks. So my 70-plus-year-old mom gets up on this top bunk. She's getting up there. It was good. She did great. And it was, you're getting settled in, and there's people milling around everywhere. Everyone was resting. The shoes and socks were coming off, and we were kind of in shock, but we were tired. We were resting too and getting settled in, and my mom was kind of across the room, and I go over and to check on her, and there's her feet kind of hanging off the top bunk, and I go over and kind of pretend to tickle her toes, and she kind of looks at me and smiles, and suddenly this head appears from nowhere at the side of the bed and says, "Your bandages, do you have blisters?" And Mom tells me later she had no idea he was even talking about her feet. And we started chatting, and this is Iran, one of the people that we met. And we started chatting, and we realized pretty quickly this question that to start this conversation was designed so he could talk about his blisters, which he had a lot. He had a lot of blisters. He'd started the Camino way early on. He'd been traveling for 500 miles already. And so we got to chatting, and then another person appears out of nowhere to chime in about his blisters and his feet. And all of a sudden, the four of us, complete strangers, are off to dinner, you know, in the middle of Spain, like it's the most natural thing in the world for four strangers to go off to dinner together. And we had the most wonderful meal, just sharing stories and talking about the Camino and what brought us here. And it was remarkable. Although, at some point in time during this meal, I kind of realized maybe perhaps there was some competitive tension between Iran and the other man was Stephen. Perhaps they'd been walking together for a few days. Iran was from Philadelphia. He was Asian American, nice guy. Stephen, Texas. He was in IT. So one thing that we heard Iran do was, "Hey Stephen, you're in IT, huh?" It. Kind of making fun of Stephen. Stephen's job, saying it was it. And there was another awkward moment later. Pretty awkward. We got through it okay, and we're having a nice time. But Stephen, so Iran, tell us about Japan. You know, it was a racist comment, just downright racist. And Iran, what? He really got offended, and my mom gasped. I just didn't know what to say. Iran had shared that he'd been traveling all over the place, and we opened up and shared about where we'd been. Traveling came up a lot, with people that we met. He'd been to the airport, and he hadn't shared at all that he'd been to Japan, but we moved through this really awkward moment pretty quickly and kind of moved on, and we moseyed on back to our hostel, and that was it. The next morning, Iran left before daybreak, and Stephen, we left next, so we'd never talked to these folks again. Never. That was it. But it's so memorable to me. Mom, a few nights later, we were traveling and we stayed in another public albergue, and it was, again, pretty quiet. People were resting, but Mom turned over to the gentleman sleeping in the bunk next to us in the late afternoon and said, "Nice stick." He was carving on a walking stick that he had made, actually, and his name was Scott. He was from Italy. "Nice stick." That's all he said. Hours of conversation ensued. Hours of beautiful conversation. He was traveling with his brother and a friend. He was a carver. We ended up buying these conchas from him that he made. And the shell is a symbol of the Camino. Pilgrims who walk the Camino have these shells. We met the Latvians. We met the Pennsylvanians. We met a French guy. There's so many more stories that I could tell. A man we called 49, a woman we called Spock's sister. We were just making up people's names after a while. We didn't know who they were. All these strangers became shared adventures. And it was just such a wonderful way to meet